The species that swore to destroy humanity. Now they kneel before us, Part 5 years after the war ended. The galaxy looked completely different. The Terran coalition included 73 species governing over 200 worlds. What had started as humanity's desperate alliance had grown into something unprecedented. A civilization built on choice rather than conquest. Commander Taimin, now president of the coalition, stood before the assembly hall on Earth. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, including a small delegation of reformed Vertaxians. It still felt strange sometimes seeing former enemies working alongside former prey species. We gathered today to commemorate the 10th anniversary of First Contact, Taimin began. A contact that began with a declaration of extinction and ended with a declaration of cooperation. In the audience, Dr. Minji sat with her research team. Half of them were aliens now, including 2 Vertaxians who had proven brilliant in xenobiology. Together they had eliminated genetic modification designed to enforce servitude in 17 species. It's strange, one of the Vertaxian scientists whispered to her. I was taught humans were weak. Now I see you were strong in ways we could never imagine. Minji smiled. We were terrified. Fear made us creative. That is what we lack. The ability to admit fear, to learn from it. You're learning now. That's what matters. Across the hall, Admiral Hyun-woo sat with Captain Jae-sung and Commander Bo-ra. All 3 wore dress uniforms decorated with medals from a dozen worlds. They had become heroes, though none of them felt comfortable with the title. Do you ever miss it? Bo-ra asked quietly. The fighting? Jae-sung shook his head. I miss the certainty. Enemy there, shoot them. Now everything is complicated. Complicated is better than dead, Hyun-woo said. The old admiral had retired from active service but stayed on as an advisor. He had finally found peace after years of grief. Bo-ra looked thoughtful. I give flying lessons to Vertaxian pilots now. They're terrible at improvisation, but they're learning. Last week one of them did something completely illogical. It was beautiful. On a remote station at the edge of Coalition space, Kelthara worked in a resource processing facility. Her sentence required 15 more years of labor before parole consideration. She could have been bitter, but instead found herself oddly content. The work was simple, satisfying in its directness. And she was learning things the Vertaxian Empire had never taught her. How to cooperate with equals, how to solve problems through discussion, how to admit mistakes. The station manager, a human named Dae-hyun, checked on her regularly. The young strategist who had helped design humanity's victory now ran rehabilitation programs for war criminals. How are you adjusting? He asked during his weekly visit. Kelthara paused her work. I find myself thinking about choices. In the Empire I never had real choices. Every decision was predetermined by honor, duty, caste. Now I choose everything. What to eat, how to work, whether to cooperate. It's frightening. Freedom usually is. Is this what humans feel all the time? This weight of choice? Dae-hyun smiled. Every single day. Welcome to the burden of being free. Engineer Ji-won had taken on perhaps the hardest job in the coalition. She led the team responsible for integrating Vertaxian technology with human innovation, while teaching former Empire species how to develop their own unique approaches. On a station above New Vertax, the reformed homeworld, she worked with mixed teams of engineers. The Vertaxians brought precision and power. The humans brought creativity and adaptation. Together, they created things neither could have achieved alone. The humans have an expression, a Vertaxian engineer told his colleagues. 2 heads are better than 1. I believe 73 species are better than 1. Ji-won overheard and grinned. You're learning. Chancellor Sang-hee, now in her 2nd term as coalition chancellor, had aged visibly. Leading humanity through war and peace had taken its toll. But she had no regrets. During a private moment before the ceremony, she met with the original command team. Taemin, Hyun-woo, Ji-won, Minji, Dae-hyun, Jae-sung, and Bo-ra, the people who had saved humanity. Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? She asked them. Sparing the Vertaxians? Building the coalition? Some days I think we should have just rebuilt Earth and stayed isolated. We'd be making the same mistake the Empire made. Taemin replied, thinking we're better off alone, that our way is the only way. Besides, Bo-ra added cheerfully, I have 15 alien species I owe money to. Can't abandon them now. Everyone laughed. It felt good to laugh about the war finally. The ceremony reached its climax. Taemin called forward the Vertaxian delegation. They approached slowly, nervously. Public appearances were still difficult for them. Many coalition species still harbored resentment. Their leader, a former warrior named Vexim, carried a simple wooden box. Inside was soil from the Vertaxian homeworld. "We come before this assembly," Vexim said, his voice shaking slightly, "to offer remembrance and apology. We brought death to your worlds. We attempted genocide. No words can repair this harm." He knelt and the other Vertaxians followed. "We kneel not in surrender but in gratitude. You defeated us, yes, but you also saved us. Saved us from our own nature, our own cruelty, our own limitations. You showed us that strength comes in forms we never imagined." Vexim opened the box. "This soil represents our homeworld. We offer it to be mixed with Earth's soil at the memorial for the war dead, so that we never forget what we did and what you taught us." Silence filled the hall. Then Sang-Hee stood and walked down to the Vertaxian delegation. She accepted the box, then did something unexpected. She helped Vexim to his feet. "Stand," she said firmly. "We don't want subjects. We want partners." Vexim's amber eyes shone with emotion. "We are not worthy. None of us are worthy of the mercy we've received. That's the point." Sang-Hee addressed the entire assembly. "The Vertaxians tried to destroy us. They failed. Now they're part of us. That's not weakness. That's the strongest statement we can make. That we can turn enemies into friends, fear into cooperation, death into life." The applause started slowly, then grew. Not everyone clapped. Some species and some humans could not forgive, but enough did, enough to matter. That evening, as stars filled the sky above Earth, the original team gathered at a memorial overlooking the ruins of what had been New York. Billions of names were carved into black stone, each representing someone lost in the war. They stood in silence for a long time. Finally, Jae-sung spoke. "Do you think they would approve? The dead, of what we've built?" "Some would," Hyunwoo said. "Others wouldn't. That's the nature of peace. War is simple. Everyone agrees the enemy must be stopped. Peace means living with disagreement." Minji touched one of the names on the wall. Her sister. "I think they would understand. We didn't forgive the Vertaxians for them. We forgave the Vertaxians for us, so we could move forward." Bora looked up at the stars where ships from 100 worlds moved through the darkness. "You know what's funny? The Vertaxians swore to destroy humanity. Instead, they made us into something greater. They forced us to become the species that could unite the galaxy." Taemin smiled. "They thought making us desperate would make us weak. They didn't understand that desperate humans are the most dangerous force in the universe." "Not dangerous," Ji-won corrected. "Unstoppable." Daehyun pulled out a flask and poured drinks for everyone. To the dead, to the survivors, to the future. They raised their glasses toward the memorial, toward the stars, toward tomorrow. On a prison station, Kelthera looked through her window at Earth, the world she had tried to destroy. She had spent 10,000 years as part of an empire that measured strength through conquest. Now she learned a different kind of strength, the strength to admit fault, the strength to change, the strength to kneel not in defeat but in respect. She whispered to the darkness, "Humanity. The species that refused to die. The species that turned our hatred into their strength. The species that saved us from ourselves." And in that moment, the former War Prime understood something that changed everything. The Vertaxians had not lost the war. They had been given a chance to win at peace. In the assembly hall, Sang-Hee ended the ceremony with words that would be remembered for generations. "Today we commemorate the day we met the Vertaxians, the day they swore to destroy us. But we also commemorate the day we chose to be better than our pain. The species that threatened to exterminate humanity now kneel before us, not as slaves, not as defeated enemies, but as students, as partners, as friends who learned from their mistakes. That is humanity's true victory. Not that we survived, but that we transformed survival into salvation, for ourselves and for our enemies. That is the legacy we leave to the stars." The applause echoed through the chamber, through the station, through space itself, a sound of hope, of determination, of species choosing to stand together rather than fall apart. And somewhere, in the endless darkness between stars, the galaxy listened and learned. Humanity had spoken, and the message was clear. Threaten one, face all. But seek peace and find family. The war was over. The future had begun. The species that swore to destroy humanity. Now they kneel before us. Part 4. Kelthera's surrender marked the end of the shooting war. But not the end of conflict. The War Prime sat in a detention cell on Luna Base, staring at walls that seemed too clean, too peaceful. Outside, her empire collapsed completely. Tributary species declared independence. Vertaxian colonies dissolved into civil war. The civilization that had lasted 10 millennia died in less than 2 years. And it was her fault. Taemin visited her 3 days after the surrender. The commander looked tired but not triumphant. He pulled up a chair across from the energy barrier that separated them. "You wanted to understand how we won," he said quietly. "I'll tell you." Kelthera's amber eyes met his. "Why?" "Because you need to explain it to your people. They need to understand what went wrong." "I already know. You had better technology. Better tactics." Taemin shook his head. "No, we had desperation. We had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. Your warriors fought for glory. Ours fought for survival. There's a difference. Survival is not honor. No. But survival means you get to see tomorrow. Honor is beautiful, Kelthara. I respect it. But it doesn't keep your children alive when someone wants to kill them." The War Prime looked away. "So you won through cowardice." "We won through being willing to do whatever worked." "You call that cowardice. We call it adaptation." Taemin stood up. "There will be a trial. You'll face justice for the billions you killed. But after that, you'll have a choice. Help rebuild, or spend your life in this cell. Think about it." On Earth, Chancellor Sang-He faced a different challenge. Victory had come, but at a terrible cost. 9 billion humans had died. The solar system was scarred by battle. Survivors demanded vengeance against all Vertaxians. "Execute them all," one representative shouted during an assembly. "They tried to exterminate us." "If we do that," Sang-He replied calmly, "we become them. We become the thing we fought against. They deserve death, maybe, but we deserve to be better than our worst impulses." It was not a popular position. Angry crowds gathered outside government buildings demanding blood. But Sang-He held firm, even when her approval ratings plummeted. Admiral Hyunwoo supported her, though he understood the anger. He had lost his entire family in the war. His wife, his children, everyone he loved. Sometimes at night he dreamed of revenge. But during the day he worked alongside former enemies to build something new. Dr. Minji led the scientific effort to help Vertaxian society transition. Without the pheromone control, their species was capable of independent thought, creativity, even kindness. But generations of rigid hierarchy had left them lost. She worked with Vertaxian biologists to develop treatments that would permanently break down their caste system's chemical enforcement. It was delicate work. Too much, and their society would collapse into chaos. Too little, and they would slide back into old patterns. "Why do you help us?" a Vertaxian scientist asked her one day. "We killed your people." Minji's expression was complex. "Because you were trapped in a system you didn't choose. Now you have a chance to choose something better. I want to see what you become when you're free." Jiwon focused on integrating former Vertaxian territory into what humans were calling the Terran Coalition. It was messy work. Different species had different needs, different cultures, different fears. She spent months on former Vertaxian worlds, teaching aliens how human democracy worked, how rights and representation could replace rule by force. Many were skeptical. "Your system seems weak," one local leader told her. "Everyone gets a voice? Even the foolish?" "Especially the foolish," Jiwon said. "Because sometimes the foolish have ideas the wise never considered. And because the alternative is someone deciding who deserves to speak, that power always gets abused eventually." "Is that what happened to the Vertaxians?" "That's exactly what happened." Captain Jae-sung took a different path. He led peacekeeping forces into regions where Vertaxian hardliners still fought against the New Order. It was dangerous work. Not every Vertaxian accepted that the war was over. During one mission, his team encountered a group of warriors who refused to surrender. They chose death over dishonor, attacking until Jae-sung's forces had no choice but to kill them. Afterward, he sat alone in his ship, staring at his hands. How many more have to die before this is really over? Bora found him there. The young pilot had become a commander herself, leading squadrons in the peacekeeping efforts. She sat beside him without speaking for a while. Finally, she said, My brother died in the first attack. Mars colony. He was 9 years old. Jae-sung looked at her. He had never heard her mention family before. I used to dream about revenge, Bora continued. Killing every Vertaxian I could find, making them hurt like they hurt us. But then I realized something. If I became like them, if I fought for revenge instead of survival, then they really did win. They would have turned me into a monster. So what do? We do the hard thing. We build something better. We make sure this never happens again, not by destroying them, but by showing them a better way. She smiled sadly. It's harder than war, honestly. The trials began 6 months after the surrender, held on a neutral station. They were broadcast across the galaxy. Vertaxian commanders, including Kelthera, faced testimony from their victims. Human survivors spoke of families destroyed. Alien species described centuries of brutal occupation. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Sang-hee served as the lead judge, though it hurt her to hear the testimonies. Each story was a knife, a reminder of what had been lost. But she listened to every word, gave every defendant a chance to speak. Kelthera's turn came on the 10th day of trials. She stood before the assembled court, her amber eyes clear. I have no defense, she said simply. I followed orders, but that does not excuse my actions. I believed my species was superior, that might made right. I was wrong. I destroyed billions of lives because I could not imagine being wrong. Dae-hyun, watching from the observation deck, was surprised. He had expected defiance, not admission. Kelthera continued, I ask for no mercy. I deserve none. But I ask that you judge my species by what they might become, not what I made them. The court deliberated for 3 days. The verdict was guilty on all charges. The sentence, life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 20 years of service to the coalition. Not everyone agreed with the decision. Many thought it too lenient. Others thought any mercy was weakness. But Sang-hee explained her reasoning in an address to Earth. We could execute them. We could imprison them forever. We could even exterminate their entire species. We have the power now. But power without restraint is tyranny. Justice without mercy is revenge. We are better than that. We have to be. Slowly, the anger began to cool. Not disappear, but transform into something else. Determination to build a future where such wars could not happen. Taemin visited Kelthera one final time before her transfer to a work facility. You could have destroyed my people, the former war prime said. Why didn't you? Taemin thought about it for a long moment. Because we didn't fight to destroy you. We fought to survive. There's a difference. Survival means finding a way forward, not just eliminating threats. If we had killed every Vertaxian, we would have proven you right about us. That we're a threat to galactic peace, are you not? Maybe. But we're a different kind of threat. We threaten the old ways. The idea that power and violence solve everything. We threaten the comfortable belief that some species are better than others. He smiled slightly. That's a threat I can live with. As Kelthera was led away to begin her sentence, she looked back once. You know, I almost pity the next species that threatens humanity. Why? Because now you know what you're capable of. The species that swore to destroy humanity, now they kneel before us, Part 3. The war changed when humans stopped defending and started hunting. Kelthera received the first reports with disbelief. A human fleet had appeared deep in Vertaxian territory, 50 light-years from Earth. Impossible. Human ships couldn't travel that far, that fast. Yet there they were, attacking supply depots and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. How? She demanded, throwing her datapad across the command deck. Thexal retrieved it carefully. The humans have developed new propulsion technology, War Prime. Our scientists believe they've created a drive system we cannot detect. Find them. Destroy them. We have tried. They appear and vanish like ghosts. Kelthera's claws scraped against metal. The humans had named their new system the Shadow Drive, and it was changing everything. Jiwon had built it using principles that Vertaxian engineers considered impossible. It bent physics in ways that made no sense according to traditional science. But it worked. Commander Taemin led the first deep strike mission personally. His fleet of 30 ships traveled through space without leaving traces, appearing in the Vertaxian home system like phantoms. They didn't attack the capital world. Instead, they struck fuel refineries, communication stations, and food shipments. The Vertaxians could have absorbed the losses. What they couldn't absorb was the fear. For the first time in their history, Vertaxians felt unsafe in their own territory. The humans were inside their borders, moving freely, striking at will. Every Vertaxian commander had to wonder, could they be next? Daehyun watched tactical displays from Ceres base, his young face serious. We're not trying to destroy their military. We're destroying their confidence, Admiral Hyunwoo nodded. A frightened enemy makes mistakes, and the Vertaxians were making mistakes. Captain Jae-sung exploited each one ruthlessly. When a Vertaxian fleet divided to search for human ships, he destroyed them separately. When the enemy reinforced their supply lines, he attacked their now weakened frontline positions. When they pulled back to defend their territory, he struck their forward bases. The warrior who had once followed regulations now invented new tactics daily. His crews learned to think like him, finding opportunities in chaos. During one battle, his navigation officer suggested retreating through a debris field that should have destroyed their ship. Jae-sung smiled and gave the order. The Vertaxian ships, with their careful, logical thinking, went around the debris. By the time they cleared it, Jae-sung was gone. "Sir, that was reckless," his first officer said afterward. "Yes," Jae-sung agreed. "That's why it worked." Bora pushed tactics even further. The young pilot had become humanity's most decorated ace, with 73 Vertaxian kills. She achieved this not through superior firepower but through sheer unpredictability. In one famous incident, she flew her fighter straight at a Vertaxian battleship, then cut her engines at the last second. The battleship's automated defenses lost tracking lock. In that moment of confusion, Bora fired a missile at point-blank range and reignited her engines, spinning away before the explosion. "You could have died," Hyunwoo told her later. "Could have," Bora said cheerfully. "Didn't, though." But the weapon that truly broke the Vertaxian Empire was Dr. Minji's continued biological research. Her second-generation pheromone compound did more than confuse commands. It broke down the psychological barriers that made Vertaxians obedient. Lower caste warriors began questioning their leaders. Not just orders, but the entire system. Why should they die for commanders who treated them as expendable? Why follow an empire that offered no rewards, no recognition, no hope? Rebellion started small. A ship refusing orders. A garrison abandoning their post. Then larger. Entire fleets mutinied. Colonies declared independence. The Vertaxian Empire, which had ruled for 10,000 years, cracked from within. Kelthera watched her civilization crumble with growing rage. She ordered harsh punishments for rebels, but that only created more rebellion. She executed commanders who failed, but that made the survivors afraid to engage humans at all. In desperation, she did something unprecedented. She asked for a meeting with human leadership. Chancellor Sang-hee received the request with surprise. "She wants to negotiate?" Taemin shook his head. "She wants to understand. She can't comprehend how we're winning. Should we meet with her?" "No," Daehyun said firmly. "Not yet. She needs to be more desperate first." So humanity continued its campaign. Not a campaign of conquest, but of liberation. Wherever they found Vertaxian tributary species, humans offered an alternative. Join Earth's coalition and be treated as equals. Many accepted. The Vertaxians had ruled through fear and strength. When humans demonstrated greater strength, their empire evaporated. Species that had served for centuries suddenly switched sides. Ji-won led the integration efforts, helping former enemies adopt human technology and principles. She worked alongside aliens who had fought against humanity months before and found them eager to learn. "Why do you help us?" one alien engineer asked her. "We attacked your people." Ji-won looked at him steadily. "You attacked us because you were forced to. We're giving you a choice. That's the difference between us and them." As the Vertaxian Empire shrank, Kelthera made her final gamble. She gathered every remaining loyal ship, every warrior still willing to die for the old ways. Nearly 500 vessels, the largest fleet she could assemble. Her target, Earth itself. If she could destroy humanity's homeworld, their rebellion would collapse. The tributary species would fall back in line. The Empire would survive. She was wrong about everything. Hyunwoo watched the approaching fleet with calm eyes. "She's coming exactly where we expected." "The trap is ready?" Sang-hee asked. "Has been for months." The trap was beautiful in its simplicity. Kelthera thought Earth was vulnerable, protected by scattered defenders. She didn't know that humanity had spent a year fortifying the Sol system, with weapons the Vertaxians couldn't imagine. Minefields that adapted to enemy movements, satellites with shadow drives that could appear anywhere, drones controlled by human pilots who thought faster than any computer, and pheromone clouds so thick that any Vertaxian ship entering the system would tear itself apart from internal confusion. But the greatest weapon was waiting deeper in the system. As Kelthera's fleet entered Earth space, Taman contacted her directly. "This is Commander Taman of Earth Defense. You can still retreat?" Kelthera's image appeared on screen, her amber eyes blazing. "I will see your world burn, human. Then you'll die here, and your species will remember you as the leader who destroyed them. We shall see." The battle began. Kelthera had superior numbers and powerful ships, but humanity had spent a year learning every weakness, exploiting every flaw, perfecting every tactic. The Vertaxian fleet flew into a storm of precision and chaos. Jae-sung led from the front, his squadron moving like dancers through fire. Bora executed maneuvers that made hardened warriors weep with frustration. Human ships appeared and vanished, struck and fled, killed and survived. And the pheromone clouds did their work. Vertaxian crews turned on each other. Ships collided because confused navigators couldn't follow orders. Kelthera screamed commands that her own warriors no longer understood how to obey. Within 6 hours, half her fleet was destroyed or disabled. Within 12, only her flagship remained functional. Taman's voice came through her communications again. "Surrender, please. No more of your people need to die." Kelthera looked around her bridge. Dead and dying warriors lay everywhere. Her mighty empire had fallen. Her unbeatable species had been beaten by creatures she had called insects. She reached for the self-destruct but found her hand wouldn't move. Not from injury, from doubt. Finally she spoke. "I surrender." The species that swore to destroy humanity, now they kneel before us, part. 6 months after the first attack, humanity was still alive. Kelthera found this annoying. The War Prime paced her command deck, studying reports that made no sense. Human colonies should have fallen within weeks. Instead, they kept fighting with tactics that defied all logic. They would attack supply lines, then retreat before reinforcements arrived. They would abandon entire stations after planting traps. They refused to engage in proper battles. "Cowards," she growled, slamming her fist on the console. "They fight without honor." Her second-in-command, a younger Vertaxian named Thexal, bowed his head. "Perhaps that is why they survive, War Prime." Kelthera's eyes blazed. "Do not suggest that cowardice is strength." Meanwhile, deep inside the asteroid series, Commander Taman ran humanity's Resistance Command Center. The location was secret, hidden behind rock and ice, protected by technology that the Vertaxians couldn't detect. Here the survivors planned their next moves. Ji-won stood before a holographic display, explaining her latest discovery. The engineer had spent months studying Vertaxian technology, and she had found something interesting. "Their shields are powerful, but they're predictable," she said, manipulating the display to show energy patterns. "They cycle through the same frequencies every time. If we can time our attacks perfectly, we can hit them during the microsecond transition between cycles." Admiral Hyunwoo frowned. "How microsecond are we talking?" 0.003 seconds. "That's impossible." Ji-won smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "For them, maybe. They rely on automated systems because they think machines are more honorable than intuition. But humans? We can feel the timing. We've been doing impossible things since we learned to throw rocks at mammoths." In another section of the base, Dr. Minji worked in a laboratory that smelled like chemicals and fear. The xenobiologist had been studying Vertaxian biology from captured samples. What she discovered changed everything. She burst into the command center, nearly dropping her datapad in excitement. "I figured it out. Their caste system isn't just cultural, it's biological." Taman looked up from battle plans. "Explain." "They use pheromones to maintain hierarchy. The warrior caste literally cannot disobey the command caste because their biology won't let them. It's built into their evolution." "How does this help us?" Minji's grin was fierce. "Because I can synthesize those pheromones. I can confuse their command structure, make warriors ignore orders, make their entire military fall apart from the inside. Dai Hyun, who had become Tai Min's chief strategist, leaned forward. How long until you can produce enough? 3 weeks. Maybe less if you give me more resources. You have whatever you need. The first test of humanity's new tactics came at Titan Base, one of Saturn's moons. Captain Jae-sung commanded a small force of 12 ships against a Vertaxian patrol of 50. By all logic, his squadron should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, they fought like ghosts. Jae-sung had spent his whole career in the military, following rules and regulations. Now he threw all of it away. His ships scattered in patterns that made no tactical sense, then converged from impossible angles. They used Jupiter's radiation to mask their signatures. They fired during the shield transition windows that Ji-won had identified. 3 Vertaxian ships exploded before they even knew they were under attack. The enemy tried to respond, but human tactics baffled them. When the Vertaxians moved to surround Jae-sung's forces, the humans simply fled. When the enemy gave chase, they ran into mines. When the Vertaxians regrouped, humans attacked from a completely different direction. After 6 hours, the Vertaxian patrol had lost 20 ships. Jae-sung had lost none. He reported back to command with barely controlled excitement. It works. Everything works. They're so locked into their honor code that they can't adapt. When we do something unexpected, it takes them minutes to respond. In space combat, minutes might as well be years. More victories followed. Small ones at first, then larger. A young pilot named Bora became famous for surviving encounters that should have killed her 3 times over. She flew like gravity was optional, and physics was a suggestion. After one battle, Hyunwoo asked her how she kept surviving. Bora shrugged. I think about what makes sense, then I do something else. The Vertaxians expect logical tactics, so I give them chaos instead. That sounds insane. Maybe, but I'm alive and they're dead, so who's really crazy? The turning point came when Minji finished her pheromone weapon. It wasn't a bomb or a missile. It was simply a gas that human ships could release near Vertaxian vessels. The enemy wouldn't even know they were being attacked. The first deployment happened during a major battle at Europa. Kelthara herself led 300 ships against what she thought was humanity's last stronghold in the Jupiter system. She expected an easy victory. Instead, she found nightmare. Human ships released Minji's pheromone clouds. Within minutes, Vertaxian crews began acting strangely. Lower caste warriors questioned orders. Ship commanders received conflicting signals from their own biology. Formations broke apart as captains tried to figure out what was happening. Then Jae-sung and Bora led their squadrons through the confusion, striking with precision that the scattered Vertaxian forces couldn't counter. Kelthara watched in horror as her fleet collapsed, not from superior firepower, but from confusion and chaos. The humans were attacking her species' biology itself. She ordered a retreat, the first in her military career. As her ships fled, she heard something over the communication channels. Humans laughing. The laughter haunted her dreams. Back on Earth, Chancellor Sang-hee addressed the survivors. More than 6 billion humans had died in the war, but 3 billion still lived. They were tired, traumatized, but not broken. 6 months ago, they said we would be extinct, Sang-hee told them. Today, we're still here. Not because we're stronger than them, but because we're smarter. Because we adapt. Because we refuse to quit. She paused, looking into the cameras that broadcast her words across the solar system. The Vertaxians thought our flexibility was weakness. Our creativity was cowardice. Our refusal to fight fairly was dishonorable. They're learning the truth now. Those aren't weaknesses. They're the reasons we're still alive. In the command center, Tae-min studied star charts with his team. Ji-won had upgraded their ships with technology stolen and modified from Vertaxian wrecks. Minji had 3 more biological weapons in development. Dae-hyun had planned 17 different strike operations. Admiral Hyunwoo looked at the data and nodded slowly. We've survived. Now it's time to do more than survive. What do you mean? Tai-min asked. The old admiral's eyes were hard. I mean, it's time to show them what happens when you threaten Earth. We're taking the fight to them. Across space, in dozens of hidden bases and secret facilities, humanity prepared for the impossible. They would not just defend anymore. They would attack. They would strike at the Vertaxian Empire itself. And somewhere on her flagship, Kelthera felt the first whisper of something she had never experienced before. Not fear, exactly, but doubt. Maybe these humans were not insects after all. The species that swore to destroy humanity, now they kneel before us part. The stars looked peaceful through the viewing window of the dawn's promise. Commander Taemin stood on the bridge, watching the distant lights with careful eyes. His crew had traveled for 6 months to reach this point in space, following strange signals that suggested intelligent life. After centuries of searching, humanity was about to meet another species among the stars. "Sir, we're receiving a response to our greeting," said the communications officer. Her voice trembled with excitement. This was the moment they had dreamed about since childhood. Taemin straightened his uniform. "Put it on screen." The image that appeared made several crew members gasp. The alien was tall, nearly 8 feet, with dark purple skin covered in natural armor plates. Its eyes glowed amber, and when it spoke, the translation software turned its growling language into cold, harsh words. "You dare approach the Vertaxian Empire without permission? You inferior creatures insult us with your presence." Taemin felt his stomach drop, but he kept his voice calm. "We come in peace. We only wish to establish friendly relations between our peoples." The alien's face twisted into what might have been a smile, but it looked more like a predator showing its teeth. "I am Kelthera, War Prime of the 9th Fleet. Your species will be remembered as the shortest lived in galactic history. We give you one of your solar cycles to prepare for extinction." The screen went black. For a moment, nobody on the bridge moved. Then chaos erupted as officers shouted questions and warnings. Taemin's mind raced. He had prepared for many scenarios during first contact. Total war had not been one of them. "Get me a direct line to Earth now." The message took 4 hours to reach home. The response came back in 3. By then, sensors showed Vertaxian ships moving toward human space. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Back on Earth, Chancellor Sang-hee called an emergency meeting of all world leaders. The woman had led humanity through economic troubles and climate disasters, but this was different. This was extinction. "How long do we have?" she asked Admiral Hyunwoo, the head of Earth's defense forces. The old military man looked tired. "Based on their fleet speed, they'll reach our outer colonies in 2 weeks. Mars and Earth within a month. Can we fight them?" Hyunwoo pulled up tactical displays showing the Vertaxian ships. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their shields can withstand anything we have. Their weapons can crack a planet. In a straight fight, we lose badly." A young analyst named Dae-hyun spoke up from the back of the room. "Then we don't fight straight." Everyone turned to look at him. Sang-hee raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "They called us inferior. They think we're weak. Maybe that's our advantage. They expect us to fight like them, with honor and traditional tactics. What if we don't?" "You mean guerrilla warfare?" Hyunwoo frowned. "Against a spacefaring empire? I mean, we do whatever it takes to survive. We cheat, we hide. We strike when they don't expect it. We make every single human life cost them dearly." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the building. A message came through from Mars Colony. The Vertaxians had arrived early. On Mars, engineer Ji-won was working on atmospheric processors when the sky turned red. She looked up and saw ships descending. They were beautiful in a terrible way, sleek and deadly like knives falling from heaven. Then the shooting started. The Vertaxian weapons didn't explode like human bombs. They simply erased things. Buildings, vehicles, people, all gone in flashes of purple light. Ji-won ran, her training taking over even as her mind screamed in horror. She had to reach the data center. Had to save the colony's research. Around her, people died. Families she had shared meals with. Children she had taught. All gone in seconds. She reached the data center as it began to collapse. Inside, she grabbed every drive she could carry, stuffing them into her emergency pack. Through the walls, she could hear the high-pitched whine of Vertaxian weapons getting closer. Ji-won made it to an emergency shuttle just as the dome above her shattered. She launched without checking systems, without even strapping in properly. The small craft shook as debris pelted its hull. Behind her, Mars colony became a crater. She wasn't the only survivor, but there weren't many others. Out of 50,000 colonists, maybe 200 escaped. The Virtaxians didn't even chase them. They simply moved on to the next target. 3 days later, G1 arrived at Luna Base, humanity's largest military installation near Earth. She was in shock, barely able to speak. But the data drive she carried told a story. Sensor readings from the attack showed patterns in the Virtaxian weapons. Weaknesses? No, but patterns were something. Admiral Hyunwoo met her personally. "We need everything you saw, everything you remember." G1's hands shook as she uploaded the data. They didn't even care about us. We were insects to them. They destroyed 50,000 people like it was nothing. "That's their mistake," Hyunwoo said quietly. "They think we're insects. Insects are hard to kill. They survive everything." Over the next week, more attacks came. Europa Station vanished. The asteroid belt colonies went dark. Earth's orbital platforms were destroyed in a single coordinated strike that killed 30,000 people. The Virtaxians broadcast their victories across all frequencies, making sure humanity heard every word. Kelthera herself appeared on screens, her amber eyes glowing with satisfaction. "Your species is weak. You have no honor, no strength, no purpose. We will erase you from the galaxy and no one will remember you existed." But Kelthera didn't understand something about humans. When they were pushed to the edge, when extinction stared them in the face, they didn't give up. They got angry. In bunkers beneath Earth's surface, in hidden bases on distant moons, and ships scattered throughout the solar system, humanity made a choice. They would not go quietly. They would not die with honor. They would fight with everything they had, in every way they could think of for as long as they could breathe. Chancellor Sang-hee broadcast a message to all surviving humans. Her voice was steady, even though tears ran down her face. "They call us weak. They call us inferior. They think we'll surrender or run. They're wrong. We are humanity. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have rebuilt from ashes and risen from ruins. We have looked at impossible odds and laughed. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to show these aliens what it means to threaten Earth. We're going to teach them that humanity doesn't know how to quit. And when this is over, when we're still standing and they're broken at our feet, we'll ask them one question. Do you understand now?" On the bridge of her flagship, Kelthera heard the broadcast and laughed. The humans were delusional. Their extinction would take weeks, not months. She had no idea she had just made the worst mistake in Virtaxian history.